All right, let's go into the college football playoff rankings. They're going to come out, I believe, tomorrow, the latest edition. I'll give you mine, and then I will run through the 8 teams that are still alive for the college football playoff and what they need to do in order to make the college football playoff. Let's start with Alabama. They are the unquestioned best team in college football right now. I actually believe that Nick Saban's team getting a little bit of a challenge from Citadel is the best thing that can happen to them. That's why so many of the idiots that were out on social media like, oh, this proves Bama's not very good. No. What it proves is Nick Saban can now grab them by the scruff of the neck and say, listen up. This is what happens when you don't play very well. You get whipped. Even though it's tied at 10, they never really had a legitimate chance to lose that game. They end up blowing out Citadel. Alabama's the unquestioned number 1. How does Alabama make the college football playoff? Simple road. Beat Auburn and beat Georgia. Honestly, they could lose to Auburn. As long as they beat Georgia, they would be in the playoff. I think Alabama is in the playoff if they beat Auburn. Even if Georgia beats Alabama, I think the committee will not be able to say Alabama is not one of the best 4 teams in all of college football. So I think all Alabama has to do, really, is split their final 2. If Bama goes 1-1 in the final 2, they are in the playoff. You're not going to convince me that they are going to be left out of the playoff. Now, I think they're going to win both these games, but they are going to beat Auburn this weekend, and then I think they'll beat Georgia. That's what you should be rooting for if your team is on the periphery or someone that you root for is not right now in the Final 4. Second spot, Clemson. What does Clemson need to do? Now, I don't think Clemson has the same easy pathway that Alabama does. I think if Clemson were to lose to South Carolina or if they were to lose to Pittsburgh, I'm not sure Clemson gets in because the overall resume of the ACC is not very good. They may have one top 25 win when the new final polls come out. So I think that Clemson needs to win both of their games. If they do, they will be 13-0. Okay? In the third spot, Notre Dame, I should say, has the simplest role of all because they only have one game left and they know exactly what they need to do. They need to beat USC. The Trojans are falling apart down the stretch. They just got beat by UCLA. Chip Kelly starting to get it rolling already at UCLA. They just won the massive game between USC and UCLA. All that Notre Dame has to do to guarantee themselves a spot in the college football playoff is go out and beat USC in LA this weekend, and Notre Dame can kick their feet up. They're the equivalent of a golfer that has already posted a score, and they will just kick their feet up, and they will be set. Nothing to worry about. I think there's a good chance Clay Helton gets fired right after that. I really do. Some of you out there can argue otherwise. I think it's unlikely Clay Helton gets to come back for another year if the team goes 5-7 this year. All right? So that's what is going to happen for Notre Dame. I think they go beat USC. I think they're in the playoff. In the 4th spot, if Michigan beats Ohio State and then beats Northwestern, I think you're going to be hard-pressed to have anybody jump over Michigan. I think the Wolverines need to beat Ohio State this weekend. They are 4-point favorites in this game. First time Ohio State has not been favored since I think all the way back in 2014 when they played Alabama in the college football playoff. I think that's correct. So they need to beat Ohio State in the shoe, and then they need to advance and beat Northwestern in the Big Ten title game. In my 5 spot right now, I've got Georgia. How does Georgia make the college football playoff? Georgia needs to beat Georgia Tech, and then they need to advance to the SEC title game and pull off the upset over Alabama. If Georgia wins their next 2, they are in. If they lose any, they are out. Not complicated. Michigan, by the way, loses any, they are out. If Notre Dame loses to USC, they potentially could still make the college football playoff. That's an intriguing story. In the 6th spot, Oklahoma. Oklahoma is now a 1-point underdog on the road in Morgantown against West Virginia. If Oklahoma beats West Virginia and then likely gets a rematch against Texas, Oklahoma would be right up there with Michigan, right on the edge of making the college football playoff. Their claim would be strengthened substantially by arguing that they had gone back and vanquished the team that beat them in Texas. Okay? That's what Oklahoma needs to do. In the sixth spot right now, I have got Washington State. Sorry, seventh spot, I've got Washington State. In the sixth spot, I've got Oklahoma. In the seventh spot, I've got Washington State. What needs to happen for Washington State to pull off a run into the playoff? They first of all need to beat Washington this Friday in the Apple Cup, and then they need to go out and beat Utah in the Pac-12 championship game. If they pull that off, if they pull off both of those wins, they also need Oklahoma to lose one of two. They need probably the Big Ten. They probably need the Big Ten. They need Michigan or Ohio State to lose in the Big Ten championship game so that there is a 2-loss Big Ten or 4-loss Big Ten champion or whatever else. That's how Washington State gets into the playoff. There are also murkier parts there. What happens if Notre Dame were to lose? What happens if Clemson were to lose? But I think what likely needs to happen is need to get an upset of West Virginia. Then you need whoever wins the Michigan and Ohio State game to get upset by Northwestern, which, by the way, I don't think is crazy, okay? And then in the 8th spot, I've got Ohio State. What does Ohio State need to do to make the college football playoff? I think what Ohio State needs to do is beat Michigan. Then they need to beat Northwestern. Then they would need for Oklahoma to lose. And then I think there's a good chance they would jump Washington State in my rankings and into the college football playoff as the 4 seed. Now, on Ohio State, I don't believe anybody else really has a chance to make the college football playoff. I really don't. I think those are the 8 teams that are fighting for the 4 spots. Okay,